Bruh, in light of Diddy Gate, there's been a lot of talk about Diddy's dad being a snitch. But I just so happen to be reading Guy Fisher's book, who was one of Nicky Barnes' partners back in the days, and he mentioned Melvin Combs, who is Diddy's father, in his book. And this is what he said. He said, although Bumpy Johnson's name rings the biggest bells when I think about the black gangster movies of the 1960s, I must say that one of the most flamboyant and successful gangsters I have personally known from the streets of New York during that era was Melvin Combs, the father of Sean P. Diddy Combs. Superfly was the most noted and successful black movie made in the 70s. It was also the movie that inspired me to become a successful street hustler. It inspired me because everyone who knew Melvin Combs knew his nickname was Superfly, and that the movie was all about his life and times. The custom-made black Cadillac Eldorado Ron O'Neal drove in the movie belonged to a real PIMP by the name of KC. It was Melvin Combs who personally talked to KC and got him to lend his Pitmobile to Ron O'Neal for the movie. The cost to make the movie was a little more than $100,000. Melvin personally gave Ron O'Neal an undisclosed amount of money to make what was known to those in the know as Melvin's movie. Melvin did business with every major drug dealer who came through Harlem. The more money he made, the more flamboyant he became, earning himself the name of Superfly. Other drug dealers, such as Jimmy Terrell, who worked with Melvin, also gained nicknames. Jimmy Terrell would become known as Goldfinger. Harold Munger, another close friend of Melvin's, would become known as Hollywood Harold. These names would remain with Melvin Superfly Combs, Jimmy Goldfinger Terrell, and Harold Hollywood Harold Munger, up and until they were taken out in the 70s and early 80s. There is an old saying that states, the apple never falls far from the tree. This is a true statement, especially when you compare Melvin Superfly Combs' illicit gains from being successful and flamboyant to his son Sean P. Diddy Combs' innate and totally legal gains of becoming both successful and flamboyant like his dad. Melvin's downfall as a gangster was due to his being young in comparison to the much older black gangsters who ran Harlem and were set in their ways. To them, Melvin was an outsider bringing change to a game they had built and controlled for over 30 years. His flamboyant style, along with his smooth-talking expression and educated words, made Melvin his own man. But he was the type of man the old-timers were not yet ready to accept as one of them. In reality, Melvin didn't need them because he had what only a few of the older black gangsters such as Bumpy Johnson, Lamb, Zach, and Big Robbie had. Melvin had a direct connection to let's just say he had a connection to the French Connection, who had the best product. Melvin Combs was several years older than me. He was also one of the very first black guys living in our projects to attend a Catholic school, a school called St. Rita's, which was located across the street from the far end of the Patterson Projects. The majority of the students attending St. Rita's were Irish and Italian. As fate would have it, by the time Melvin was in his mid-20s, his boyhood Italian and Irish friends were now living the lives of street hustlers, or, as law enforcement called them, Italian and Irish mobsters. As a result of these friendships, Melvin was introduced to a top-level French Connection drug supplier and never looked back. He had access to the importation of pure French heroin and did business with all the up-and-coming street hustlers like Leroy Nicky Barnes, Goldfinger, Hollywood Harold, Frank Pee Wee Matthews, and Mikey Barrett, just to name a few. But with all the individuals Melvin surrounded himself with, he never had a bodyguard, which is a cardinal sin for any known street hustler handling the amount of money Melvin was making. He became a victim of his wealth and his rapid success that allowed him to bypass the old-timers and their rules. Some people say he was set up to be taken out by two police detectives who were on the payroll of an elderly black gangster who owned a popular nightclub in Harlem. It's said that Melvin, accompanied by a sexy black female, was pulled over in one of his late model vehicles. instead of taking Melvin out and the female. The two detectives made him get out of the car, and they searched the vehicle for contraband, finding nothing. A search of the trunk also turned up negative. Both Melvin and the female re-entered Melvin's car and drove off. Several blocks down, Melvin was pulled over again, and this time, a search rendered by two different police officers resulted in him being arrested for possession of a felony amount of drugs. Melvin was booked and charged with possession of a controlled substance with intent to sell. He made bail, and shortly thereafter, word on the street was that he had made a deal with the federal government to become an informant. Without a personal bodyguard, Melvin became a target of greed. With Melvin out of the way, the owner of the popular nightclub in Harlem would enhance his personal wealth. Melvin's Superfly Combs was taken out. Several years later, when I had personally become both successful as a street hustler and a close friend of the legendary drug dealer Leroy Nicky Barnes, before his legacy went down, Nick and I were sitting down talking, and Melvin's name came up in our conversation. Nick told me that the first $1 million he made was due to his friendship and business relationship with Melvin Combs. He said that Melvin wasn't going to tell on anyone. The rumor about Melvin being a rat was paid for and put out by the two detectives the nightclub owner had hired. Melvin's murder was business, the business of regaining control of the astronomical amounts of money the old gangsters once controlled in Harlem. So I'm looking at this and I'm reading this and I'm saying I have to put this out there because everyone is saying that he was a snitch, but nobody knows where the source of that came from. And in Guy's book, he said that narrative was put out there on purpose. Let me know what you guys think, because I kind of believe this. I kind of believe that this is possible because Guy Fisher was up there. And also Frank Lucas said that Melvin wasn't a snitch either. So you had three of the top guys of that time that ran the streets: Nicky Barnes, Guy Fisher, and Frank Lucas. All three of them saying that Melvin wasn't a snitch. So could it